Hello, hello, and welcome to the 9th episode of Season 2 of Hitchhiker's Guide to Marketing Analytics. I'm Nadia Davis. I lead marketing here at Calibramind, and we got an exciting topic today. Thank you for those of you who are attending multiple episodes this season. I see a lot of people being interested. The world of marketing has us on our tiptoes with all of the developments out there. And I feel like today's topic is one of those developments that you just cannot look away from. Lots of noise, lots of talk, lots of, what people do with it. And we wanted to take a minute and just cover the basics. And I have friends in the smartest places. I told you that before. So I have Joe and Nolan from Calibramind who are helping me today with storytelling. Joe, Nolan, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Nadia. Looking forward to talking about a very hot topic coming up with a lot of the customers that I work with, MCP servers.
Very
Thanks
good. Nolan, that's your field.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nadia. I'm happy to be here and I'm looking forward to going deep into the technical side of MCP servers.
Cool. So I think we might as well start with like the elephant in the room. What are people talking about out there, right? So you have the voices on LinkedIn, but they're not representative of the market. So I went to the Gartner's B2B Marketing Summit literally a week ago in Denver. And one of the biggest things in terms of where people put their priorities this year was agentic analytics. So CMOs are looking at, ways to improve marketing efficiencies to get things done faster. So marketing analytics was top of all use cases for what people want to move into the world of agentic execution, right? And then everybody was talking about the same problem. Like here, it shows that 1 in 3 are reporting challenges with integrating marketing data. And I swear that's like a deja vu. 10 years ago, when the programmatic stuff was rolling out, ABM platforms were out there, everybody was talking about marketing data silos. Got a little bit over here, a little bit over there. Then the conversation got old. We got all, tired of the same narrative. But now we're taking all these marketing data silos to the new place, which is agentic platform of choice, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, or anything. So I got back from Marketing Analytics Summit. From the Gartner's B2B Symposium, and I went to Joe because Joe is our resident expert on making all things happen in Claude. And I said, Joe, I got all this stuff, and here I'm showing you all of the different spreadsheets that I pulled from all the different places, right? Here's the LinkedIn export. Those campaigns and campaign data could look many different ways. Here's my Salesforce stuff. And what I want you to pay attention to is I'm kind of flipping through the images here. Look at the column titles and look at the, all of the line items, what I'm pulling. So you will notice quickly there's Reddit, here's another version of Reddit. You can pivot those reports in different ways. Here's the campaign report from Salesforce. The point here is this flickering carousel of images is that it's apples and oranges. So you can absolutely layer all of this stuff into some kind of a Claude, vibe dashboard, but you're going to have apples and oranges. So I went to Joe and I said, Joe, can you make this happen for me? And I would prefer for this thing to do, a live data every time there's a change. So Joe, what did you tell me?
Yeah, I have a little tangent that I probably went on, but garbage in,
Just
garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out is a tale as old as time, and it's just as prevalent in the AI world. Too many people are trying to use AI to solve these data discrepancy and data silo problems by throwing just lumps and lumps of data into Claude and saying, make this better. And it does a good job, but it's incredibly inefficient. You're burning tokens every single time you do that. It might interpret things a little different, so your data looks a little different, and it's really just not the right way to do things. There are better ways, and I don't want to get too far ahead of things. Let's maybe I'll take a step back. Nolan, do you want to talk to us about MCP servers? You're the resident expert. How about you tell us how these things work?
Yeah, sure. Let's start with kind of breaking down what MCP even means, right? So it means Model Context Protocol. So let's break that down even more. So model in this case is an AI model. Context is information, and protocol is a system. And so what MCP servers do is give AI clients and models a system with which to access data from other systems. And so so the way that would work would be the whole process would be when you submit a request to your AI client that's connected to an MCP server. The first thing that AI client is going to do is try to determine which which MCP server it needs to connect to answer the prompt. And you might be connected to multiple MCP servers, so it's actually going to check across all of your MCP servers what information does it need, and where does it need to get it from in order to answer your prompt. And so to do that, it has a list of all of the tools and tools that you'll hear that referred to commonly with MCP servers. They each have their own set of tools that are available to it, to the client. And so your agent is going to look through the set of tools in that MCP server and decide, well, to answer this question, I need information from this tool and from this tool and this tool. I might have to call this other tool twice, right? So it creates that kind of that orchestration of tools, and then it goes and makes those requests against all your MCP servers, gathers all that information, synthesizes the response, and that's what you ultimately wind up getting in your client. It was the MCP protocol was created around 2006 by Anthropic. It's before then it was very much the wild west, where you would have one system that would have their data set up one way, another system set up another way. Clients would have to understand how each one of these different systems are set up in order to be able to connect to those systems. And so what the MCP protocol did was unify all of those different systems so that the agent just needs to know how things work one specific way, and then can apply that system across all the different data sources. And so think of it like, I don't know, for those of you that remember around the mid-2000s when we had the REST API change in the data ecosystems, REST became the de facto way that you spoke to other systems to get information. Well, MCP is that version of REST, but now specific toward AI clients and AI agents. It's going to be the way that agents talk to other systems for the next decade or more. So that's MCP servers in a nutshell. And for a way on how to use those servers in the marketing stacks, I'm going to hand this back over to Joe.
Actually, I got a
Yes,
question
thank
for you. Did you say 2006 is when it first came out?
Sorry, no. 2024 was the MCP server protocol, but then in 2006 was the REST API. That's kind of the mid 2000s is when the REST protocol became the way that systems talk to each other.
Because I was thinking, how could it be that we've had it for all this time? You never know what's going to happen.
No, sorry, that was mistaken. It was 2024 is when MCPs first came.
So relatively new. Joe, take us through what this means for everybody else out there, because I swear I think there's like 29,000 MCP servers. If somebody wants to correct me in the chat, feel free. That's the number that I saw there. Everybody went ahead and spun one up. So we're out of a sudden in this ocean of everybody having one, but I don't really know how all of this will come together into what we're trying to achieve, which is one dashboard, hopefully, that will tell you a story.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fascinating. 29,000 MCP servers. That sounds dangerously close to a data silo to me. I know we've implemented this really interesting way of connecting that data, and LLMs like Claude and other clients can, grab these tools and pull the data together. But it's still separated. It's still segmented, and the data in Marketo still struggles to join together with the data in Salesforce. So I think the data challenges are still very, very prevalent, even though we have this new method of grabbing data and pulling it all together. Whoops, wrong button. There we go. And so that's, kind of where someone like Caliber Mind or other kind of data infrastructure type tools can come into play. Claude is a really, really good analyst. It can take data and using something as simple as a couple sentences, a question that anybody on your marketing team, anywhere in your kind of go-to-market side of the house, they know how to ask questions to an agent. They don't necessarily know how to build their own dashboards or how to, do anything like that. So the interaction there is very, very clean, but the underlying data still needs to be good and trustworthy, and it needs to work well. Otherwise, it's going to be, like I said earlier, garbage in, garbage out reporting. We've worked with a handful of customers to really like start to define some of these early MCP use cases, and we have a lot that have come up. I mean, when you have that flexible approach to interacting with your data and just a chat format, you can really brainstorm use cases almost endlessly. And so, I don't want to necessarily read through all of these, but I mean, we were able to list quite a few here, and all of these feel very relevant in their own ways. You can see how these use cases can work for different members of your go-to-market team. Buyer journey before a call, very relevant to like your SDR team or your initial sales outbound teams. They don't care as much about time to close by campaign origin. That's not something they care about at all. But someone in the demand gen side of things would care about that much more. And so it's easy to start to pull these use cases together and really use Claude as this interface to ask these types of questions. Again, as long as Claude has good data to pull from.
Can I actually ask you a question? So I was literally talking to someone on LinkedIn this morning who was telling me about yet another fantastic build. Like all of us heard the stories. I built XYZ, you should do too. Very tactical, right? So I couldn't hold back. I engaged with a lady and I said, it feels like Home Depot has just popped up on every corner and the power tools became available. So everybody just ran out and decided to build themselves a she shed, maybe even a house. And who cares that there are builders out there that build efficiently, pass all of the, county codes or whatever that is in, your city or your state. You want to do it yourself. Like nobody's talking about maintenance, but everybody wants to build themselves. And in my mind, I kind of separate the two worlds. One world is what you see, which is the front end, the UI, the visualization layer, right? The other layer is the data pipelines. And the data pipelines, like all things data, it kind of gets taken for granted because like, can't it just figure it out? I'll just connect with 3 clicks, whatever it is I'm connecting, and it will do it. Can you talk to us about kind of the implications of building data pipelines before you even get to the UI? Because I know there's cost, there's, the robustness, there's the maintenance. I said the M word. Take us kind of through thinking there.
Yeah, I think the house is a great analogy. You can build your own house. I sure can't, but there are people out there that can. But they usually don't do the plumbing and the electrical necessarily, or they still help people, have people come in and help with some of the more nitty gritty foundational work. And I think there's still plenty of room for that. Data is really a deterministic concept, and that means it's handled best when you have consistent rules and workflows that you can lean on. I think a really prime example that early couple years ago when Claude was just kind of becoming a big thing and Gemini and everything, um, we explored using AI and an interface like that to take job titles and determine like the department and the job level, and it worked really well. But it was crazy expensive, and over time we found it would sometimes infer things differently. And when you're doing, multi-million to pushing $1 billion of marketing, you can't have job titles kind of changing just because a model decided that now it thought something different. And so it's better to use things like rules and workflows to establish if it's a chief marketing officer, they are in the C-suite. And they will be every time we see chief marketing officer, and we don't need to run that through Claude. We know that. So that's a simple case statement, easy to do deterministically. But some titles are confusing. And when that's the case, you do want that inference and you do want to use AI to help. So there's a lot of ways that these tools can work together. But simply throwing your data at AI is going to lead to some room for inference differences. And then also, we can talk about the token costs all day and how that's going to change over time.
Actually, before we go into the demo, I want to bring this analogy for those of you who have been in the workforce for maybe 10, 15, 20 years. I'm sure you all remember the digital transformation and then the cloud transformation, the two transformations that we have gone through, where you did get new titles every time the transformation would come about. You had a digital marketer out of a sudden, in the early 2010s, probably, or somewhere around there, because all of the, digital stuff became available and all of the programmatic stuff got deployed. That's not the title that we had before. Within the IT world that dealt with cloud transformation, you got new functions, you had cloud ops, you had data ops, you had DevOps that came about probably 2012, 2014, which became kind of a new way of releasing that software, and cloud became one of the integral components. But speaking about cost, and that's to your point, Joe, nobody talked about when cloud became so prohibitively expensive that some CTOs, quietly, I should say, rather, without advertising it, went back and moved some of their workloads back on prem, which is, your mainframes or your servers, because they just could not afford the cost of people spinning up a bunch of jobs and just leaving them out there. And, they were getting charged for the cloud storage and things running in the cloud abandoned. So I feel like we're getting to that point much faster this time around with all the token costs, because everybody's talking about it. And SaaS is so cheap to run. It just is. You pay your yearly subscriptions and think how many times you ask for the same, data set to be visualized in a report. Every day you update it, right? In the world of Claude, you probably push that button every day. Do you push that button every day, Joe, to get the new data in?
Maybe, but
You don't want to admit publicly.
No, I think the cost it's definitely, everyone's paying a little more attention to it over the past month or so, as these token rates and everything have changed. But ultimately, like, Claude is an incredibly lucrative subsidy that Anthropic is providing us. I mean, that $20 per month plan is a lot of amazing work for very cheap. But at some point, they're going to have to change the pricing on that. At some point, they're going to have to be profitable. And I've talked to customers who have really started to think about that a lot more now. They're not just throwing everything they can at Claude. They're trying to be more intelligent about it. And I really think the time to think about it is now, when a mistake doesn't cost your organization hundreds of thousands of dollars. It can be much more limited, since it is so subsidized currently.
So why don't we actually show what a lot of people came to see here, and we'll just kind of take you through a sample demo of what the visualization could look like, and all of the underlying kind of elements that you need to know about that happen outside of Claude once it receives this data. And I want to kind of put a caveat into this demo and make sure you guys remember the same visualization or the same functionality can be done in any type of AI client. It doesn't have to be Claude. Just because Claude is so popular with B2B marketing, that's what we chose. But let me go ahead and pass this over to you, Joe, and you'll just kind of take us through the demo.
Thank you, Nadia. What I'm going to show everyone today is an MCP server in action. Specifically, we're looking at Claude hooked up to the CaliberMind MCP, and we're going to run a live attribution analysis. We're going to start off broad and then drill into our top deals and go all the way down to a single opportunity. I've started here with a prompt asking for attribution by channel for all opportunities created within the last 12 months. We're going to look at this data across 3 different models. You can notice here that Claude took my prompt and is doing some interpretation to determine exactly what I mean and which tables to reference to pull the data that I've requested. And here we have our output. What you're seeing here is attribution across the 3 models all at once: a first touch model, a last touch model, and an even weighted model. Let's dive into paid social and paid search. Paid search leads on the first touch model, but paid social takes over on an even weighted model. And so using the same data and looking at different models, we're able to tell a more complete story that paid search maybe does more to lead that first interaction with our brand that results in an opportunity, but paid social is a little more prominent throughout the broader opportunity lifecycle. And that's the point. The model you pick really changes what you're optimizing for, and multiple models work better together. From there, we're going to take a look at what this looks like for our most recently closed deals. And so to start, I'm just going to ask for the 20 most recent closed won opportunities created within the last 12 months. and some supporting data for each. Okay, so here are 20 most recently closed opportunities. You can see some kind of advanced stats on these, really just the number of marketing touches with each opportunity. You can see the touch depth is not uniform. Some of the opportunities required much more marketing touches than others, and that's just the reality of B2B marketing. From there, though, I'm going to actually ask Claude to analyze these opportunities further. And so here's a simple prompt asking for a breakdown of those marketing touches by channel, looking only at those 20 most recently closed won opportunities. And so this is going to help us understand the channel mix of our most recently closed deals. And some interesting stats you can see here. Paid social is the most prominent, along with paid search. That kind of reflects what we see in the attribution numbers as well. The split across first touch, last touch, and even weighted. And you can see paid social and paid search are still very prominent for our first touch attribution for these 20 most recent opportunities. Paid social still has a lot of attribution when we're looking at the even weighted model as well. So we can see these 20 most recent probably follow along with what we saw from the broader the past year. Really though, it was just a series of prompts there to go from a list of opportunities to some powerful attribution data on those opportunities. The simplicity of that is really valuable to users. Now I'm going to drill into one of the specific opportunities that we saw in our previous view. We're going to drill into a demo opportunity here for T-Mobile. And we can see Claude worked through our data schema to find the correct data that I needed. And if we come down here, we can see a series of recent touches that led up to the opportunity being created. You can see who performed these different interactions, what that interaction was, what channel actually sourced the interaction, and then being an even weighted model, but we can see the attributed value to that touch point. And so what you're really seeing here is a new way to interact with your go-to-market data. An MCP gives you the ability to explore this data in a very conversational manner that is very, very usable by any marketer, any marketing ops or analytics individual. It's just a very, very usable form of interacting with data. And so when we talk about democratizing data, I mean, this is really the cutting edge of how to do that, because it is such a familiar interface for everybody to use. But it really only works when the data underneath it is worth exploring, and it's standardized and it's clean. So those kind of key data governance concepts are more important now than ever before. So thanks for taking a look at this with me. This is really what it looks like when the data layer is done right, and we're excited to keep building on this. I think you're muted there, Nadia.
Oh, thank you. You have a friend in the audience when they tell you, hey, you're on mute. Thank you. What I was trying to say is that the concept of data layer keeps coming up more and more and more. Nolan, I'm curious if you have any commentary on what Joe just showed, anything that we left out.
Yeah, I just want to touch on like the kind of the magic behind the scenes around how all this stuff works, right? We don't have a channel tool, right? We don't have a tool for every possible question that a marketer could ask behind, related to their data stack. So the way that our MCP server works is that we present to the agent all of our tables and all of our data schemas and all of the information that it would need to craft the SQL to make the query to fetch all the data to answer the prompt. There's a tool that executes the query. There's a tool that goes and gets the tables. There's a tool that gets the metadata about the tables and then about the columns in the table, right? So there's a series of metadata tools that the MCP server will go fetch and then deliver that to the client, and then the AI will craft the SQL and then run the query, return the result to the agent, and then they synthesize the response from there. So that's kind of the flow, if you will, for how at least CloudRemind works and how it's able to answer all of these very different questions without having to have every possible use case spelled out into individual tools.
Could you elaborate on what we're talking about when we're saying metadata? What is metadata when it comes to GTM data, all the marketing data?
Yeah, so metadata would be the relationships between the tables. So to fetch attribution, you would have to look on this table. Well, if I wanted to find something about an account in that attribution, or that a campaign in that attribution table, I would need to use a column on the attribution table and connect it to the campaign table. Well, where are those connections? Like, where are those IDs that match the two together? Well, that's all done through this metadata that the MCP servers are going to fetch from the tools.
Yeah, it requires a data structure that is, almost like broken down into the most logical tiny pieces, and then context and information around that data structure so that the agent can piece everything back together. It's
Right.
It's a unique setup, but it works really well for these, like Nolan said, just these different arrays of questions that come up with our customers.
Right.
And remember, guys, the Scott Brinker narrative where context is king now more than ever before. Like, contextual engineering is the thing. Value engineering is what Franz Remiersma talks about. And it's, how can we extract value from abundance of insights? And look at all of the stuff that, you, Nolan, were talking about, and Joe, you mentioned, right? Like, I think this is where the token burn goes, right? Like, this is what you spend your hard-earned money from someone else's budget. Hopefully it's IT's budget, not yours. So yours goes to program execution, but still, and the context engineering has to happen outside of what you can provide within the engineered prompt, because you will never provide everything. You may never even know what's behind the field definitions in Salesforce.
This stuff is hard. Anyone who's worked, in a data governance type role, I love data governance. I think it's very important. And hearing about context and the need for context is like, yes, we've been saying that forever. Like, this is how data works best. But it's the nitty gritty. It's hard to do right. It's hard to do at scale. It's hard to get your entire organization to play along and to follow the rules. And so that's, this is why Caliber Mind, that's why we're in business. This is what we do best. Things like ingestion and normalization, identity resolution, the modeling, the nitty gritty stuff that then feeds into an agent, makes it more usable.
And just to add to that, we also have a way, if you have let's say a custom object in Salesforce, or a custom column within that object that you want to use and you want the AI to be aware of that when you're talking to it, we have a mechanism to provide that context. So if you have some internal way to describe that object or that field, and you want to be able to talk to the agent in the way that your business talks about that data, you can add that context within Caliber Mind, so that when you are talking to the agent, you're using the same language you would use in your everyday meetings, right? In your everyday conversations, which is, I think, something that makes us stick out compared to other data sources.
Yeah, that context collection is so important.
So actually, I will give you, for example, which you know, and you don't even know that I did that. Recently, going through the MCP server build and getting on the Claude marketplace to be one of the, MCP servers of record on there, we had to submit certain use cases of what you could do with Caliber Mind MCP server. So Nolan came to me and asked, I go, can you come up with a few use cases that you would use, this setup for? So I came up with 20. And then he comes back to me and goes, you have to test each of those and provide me screenshots to make sure that it actually works and returns the data that actually makes sense. It's like, darn it, I got to do 20 here. I need to bring it down to 10. So I shrunk it down to 10. And I figured, what's the one thing that kind of top of mind for me, having come back from the Gartner event, right? The Gartner event trade show flow was amazing. There's like all these ABM vendors. And I mean, I've done ABM pretty much for every business. Being in a niche business like y'all's on the call, right? You have a very specific, unique niche business that targets specific personas. So ABM only makes sense. You're not going to, spray and pray. And what I wanted to know is, out of everything that we do on the marketing side, Mary and I, and we got a lot in the works, right? Like, show me the revenue attributed to use cases where opportunities were started with an ABM touch. And ultimately, I was looking for a scenario where it would show me a lot, so I could go to my boss and say, hey, we need to invest more in ABM programming, or hey, we need to, get a different ABM platform for, increased capabilities, whatever that use case may be, right? People switch between ABM vendors all the time. Gartner said it's 2.4 ABM vendors per year per account that people see on average. Okay, it actually came back and accurately identified which opportunities had ABM touches. And it was like so non-disputable that I was actually surprised. And to me, that's one of those use cases which is kind of unique, kind of very specific. If that's your motion, or maybe you have something else, maybe events is a thing, right? Using that context and language of your business is what helps. In my case, like I will be honest with you, I'm a stickler for campaign naming convention. That is like all the campaign names are standardized because I've lived the life of many messes and kind of learned from my own mistakes. So that was super helpful, but that's very much the context that I could apply to get that view. And this is a kind of the visual that I'm showing here, like everything coming from all the different places. How can you channel it in a way where all of the relationships is still there? And maybe I'll follow up with a question, say, hey, out of those, like, show me which ones had the most social touches, because LinkedIn also claims to be, rightfully so within the ABM space. So then you kind of go into the rabbit hole, but that relationship, which really doesn't even depend on your context window. It just depends on the metadata and the context provided from the MCP server in the data that stays. Did I miss anything?
I think the follow-up question is such a big aspect of MCP and Claude that's so beneficial. I built reports for a while, and you feel so proud about a report. You present it to the stakeholder that asked for it, and there's a follow-up question. And in a lot of cases, that's a new report. And probably another 8 hours of work to pull that together. The follow-up question and that instant response from Claude, it's a game changer. It's deeper analysis, and it's so easy to do.
Huh, I didn't think about that. Thanks for letting me know. Somebody probably will ask that when I'm in front of people. Actually, we got a question, Nolan. I think this is for you. This is relevant to what we're showing since we're talking about the layering, right? So the question goes like this: which data layers does the MCP server access directly? Source applications, the warehouse, the semantic layer, or maybe a combination of the above?
It's a combination, depending on the tool and depending on the prompt, right? So it's going to fetch the tool that has the information it needs, right? But each tool might pull from the warehouse. It might combine the warehouse with the semantic layer. It might pull in application data. Right now, I think the majority of our tools all pull in something from the warehouse and the semantic layer. There's not a lot of, I think there's any application, but we do plan on adding more capabilities over time, which will pull in more application specific metadata to give the agents more context. That's the goal anyway.
So now that we talked about the endless layers of complexity, let me kind of take you back to the beginning for a second. And I was on a one of the community calls, right? And this one woman was presenting, and she was not a technical background. She was a marketer who came through the product marketing lines, right? She was presenting her version of vibe coded attribution dashboard. And she had it in GitHub, and it was all done through Claude, and she shared her GitHub. I still have the link. I figured I'm not going to call people out and share the link out. But of course I had to look. Do you remember that attribution dashboard we looked at, right? So we looked, and you bring it up and it looks beautiful, like anything AI generated. It just looks crisp. And then in the GitHub, because it's a public repository, right? In that case, there was the file that was feeding the data. And we, of course, looked at the file, and it was a lonely CSV with a lot of nulls. So, how that data related to all the other systems that she had in the background, I don't really know. Probably not know how, right? But when we look at these complexities and the schematics of what goes into, even in this abstract visualization that we're showing, what goes into all of this, it's almost like that Dunning-Kruger syndrome that, comes up again and again and again. Like the less you know, the more you think that you got it with the simplest execution of that. When in reality, once you start understanding the complexities, every time I go to Nolan with something, his hair stands up. He goes, it's not that easily done. So with this, let me go maybe in, we got a couple of slides left, and then we open this up for questions. Like what this means for your teams, because If you're a small team, just a couple of people collaborating, that's, one path to get things done. But if you have multiple teams, some of them could be, in different time zones, and then teams that you don't even talk to all the time, but you want to democratize this access and provide kind of unified place where people can run their reports or access their reports. And maybe it's your head of marketing that you want to empower, and she or he goes and reports that out to other executives, right? You want to make sure that all the teams at least triangulate into the same context behind the reports, and they know what this means, right? So for marketing ops, that's time freed up because you're not building pipelines. Like, who is here fond of building pipelines outside of Joe? Joe, you cannot answer yes to this. Like, nobody, right? It's a lot of lift, and it changes all the time. And then all the other questions come in, and you have to address those, right? If you use part of your build from scratch, as a kind of SaaS tool behind it that takes care of all the data schemas, all the relationships, and that's not something that you worry about. Again, that's more time and more effort that you can spend on other things. For demand gen people, the question is always the same. Like, I'm trying to spin up tons of campaigns and I want to know what's working right now. And in most cases, I really don't want to access any dashboard that requires more than 2 clicks. That's just how it is. I live the demand gen life, I know, and I manage demand gen teams, right? That's easy access. I've seen some people already got Claude connected to their Salesforce through that MCP server. That's great. How many campaigns are you running in Salesforce? Outside of your content syndication uploads, right? Most of your campaigns surely are in all of the external tools. So that allows you to bring it all together. You're not waiting on people. You're not asking your friend, through Slack, hey, do you mind prioritizing this? Because remember, we're friends. You're getting it right then and there. And then all of your numbers will actually true up. And that's the hardest piece when it comes to engagement data. And I feel like we talked about this outside of MCP world, right? But I feel like it has the new color because people just assume that Claude knows everything, even the things that you did not tell it. It doesn't. And then marketing analytics teams, right? You're not dealing with raw experts anymore. You're not dealing with tickets. Again, if schema maintenance is something that you're doing, you're not worried about hallucinations and then having to untangle all of that when people are already 2 miles down the road going back and forth on why the numbers didn't match. And the IT team or whoever it is, your CTO, your whoever manages the AI spend budget, maybe head of AI, maybe you have that title already. Speaking of titles, that cost is controllable because all of the heavy lifting does not go against your Claude bill. And I think with this, we kind of got to the end of today's presentation. We're happy to tell you more. Our MCP server is launching tomorrow. The page is already on our site, so you can find it there. But ultimately, we covered what the MCP server is. Think of it as USB-C of connecting from one place to another, or another version of an API that allows all of the information to get to your agentic work systems. We talked about getting data in Claude and asking additional level of insights to get to deeper analysis. We talked about infrastructure being something that you do not want to outsource to Claude. Certain things you buy, certain things you build, unless you want to spank through money like nothing. All of the nitty-gritty data stuff is more prominent than ever. Data is the new hot thing because, again, whatever you put into AI is going to blast it from the top of the mountains, and everybody will know. So you want to be careful there. Governance is always important. All of your data modeling is always important. And again, you want to control that in-house, where the AI tool becomes your visualization layer. And then when it comes to analytics and the gates that we had to being able to interpret things and understand, is up good, is down good, now that has been democratized. So with this, Joe, did I leave anything out?
I don't think so. It's pretty comprehensive. I do think like the concept of Claude tools versus Claude skills is a very interesting thing that could be a whole nother conversation. That's something that I would love. If anybody has questions around those, you should definitely shoot me an email or hit me up on LinkedIn afterwards, and I'd love to connect about it. But that until you get to that point, I think just the ability to interact with your data in this kind of new way, it's incredibly powerful, but it's also important that the data you're interacting with is something you can trust for yourself and for everyone else within your organization.
And I think the biggest takeaway, Nolan, and I'll flip that over to you after this. The biggest takeaway, if you forget everything that we talked about, if it was, in your mind some buzzwords, right? Remember one thing. MCP server is not really a server. It's a protocol to connect one place to another that runs a little program that allows your data to flow. The bizarrest thing, but MCP server is not a server, but rather a protocol. Nolan, take us home.
Yeah, I mean it's the new way that we're going to connect the data in the next 10 years. MCP is going to be everywhere. There's the proliferation of it is just getting started, and so it's a whole new world now. It's a new flavor of REST API, but one that has way more capability behind it than just fetching tabular data. So it should be interesting.
Should be interesting. And Joe, I'm going to take you up on it. We're going to do season 4, and we will talk about tools versus skills and what that looks like. So you keep that in mind. We'll do a rain check on that.
Love it.
And with this, I'm going to open this for questions. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Maybe I'm going to put you on the spot. Maybe you'll shoot us an email or, find us on LinkedIn and ask your questions. That's totally fine too. In the meantime, because usually people need a warm up before they ask a question, I want to show you what we're going to talk about on the last installment. That's actually episode 10, if I counted right. On the last installment of Hitchhiker's Guide on July 8th, after the 250th birthday of this country, we'll talk about the end of an era. That's kind of like a farewell. That's the end of the season for us. And I feel like it's the Rubicon of how marketing has worked up to this point. Our friend Drew Smith from Attributor will be here. We'll talk about everything that we covered up to today and have Drew's commentary on it. So make sure you come. And we want to make it extra, extra special for you and worth your time. So what better way to get people to show up than to do a live raffle for a year of Claude Pro subscription? And we'll give out 3 of those. Joe, you cannot come and you cannot enter because I know you will want it. You need another instance to run your stuff in it. But for the rest of you, I would love to see you on the next episode. And with this, I don't see any questions. So I would love to thank our speakers. Thank you guys so much. Nolan, thank you for the expertise. Joe, thank you for the demo.
Yeah, Nadia, I think people really need to join this finale here, because by the time season 4 starts up, who knows what the world of AI will look like. I mean, this is moving so fast. If you take a month or 2 off, could be a whole new world by the time we start back up.
You could definitely benefit from an extra subscription, right? All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining. Nolan, again, thanks to you. And we will see you on the last episode on July 8th.
Thanks, Nadia. Thanks, Nolan.
Thank you.